The information and opinions presented in this podcast are based on research done at a particular point in time. The fields of medicine, surgery, psychology, etc. are constantly evolving as new studies and movements happen. Please take into account the year of any particular episode's publication, and as new information presents itself, we will do our best to release updated episodes on the topics. Listener discretion is advised for references to medical terminology of body parts. Unless otherwise stated, no one speaking on this podcast is a medical or legal professional and cannot provide medical or legal advice. Welcome to the Trans Field Guide. There are a lot of trans people who feel like they're safer dating within the trans community, which is fair.
Yeah. I pretty much exclusively date other trans people, mostly just because cis people are not comfortable enough with their sexuality to date me. I've had a couple cis people be interested, but then,
It's kind of one of those where it's like, in practice, it gets a lot weirder.
Yeah.
Well, because I know that when I was identifying as gender fluid, trying to get cis partners to really understand that was difficult.
Yeah.
And then it became one of those things where you run the risk of people seeing it more as a fetish than as an actual, identity.
Well, any trans person runs that risk.
Yeah, that's true as well.
Yeah.
I just know that the experience that I had was this one girl that I was fooling around with. Yeah. I'm not going to say, that we didn't really have I didn't think we had anything serious. But that's a whole different story. But I was trying to explore my gender identity more. Mm. And so, I had ordered a binder, and I had gotten a packer, and all that stuff. Yeah. And was like, hey, maybe we can, go out on a date, and I'll go as male. Mm-hmm. And then, we can do this and that, and all these fun things, and all that. Yeah. Well, so then my binder gets in. Mm-hmm. And I immediately become, very nervous. Because I'm like, oh, this is real now. Yeah. Am I emotionally ready to do this? And, trying to get up the courage to actually put it on and go out. It
becomes less of, a spicy, fun thing, and more of, a fuck my life thing.
Yeah. But then she was she still had the mentality that it was, a spicy thing. Yeah. But then she started making it about her. Where it's when are we going to go on the date? I want to go on the date. When are we going to do this date? Yeah. And I'm when I'm comfortable to do it. Yeah. And the more you push me, the less comfortable I'm going to be to do it. Yeah, yeah. But it made me feel like she was fetishizing it. Mm. More so than being hey, I want you to do what makes you comfortable and explore things for yourself. Yeah. It's not about you and your identity, it's about me and getting to do something fun and kinky. Yeah.
Well, and I've met a lot of trans girls because I date a lot of trans girls, who have gone through the whole, and I'm not talking about, this is something that I see, this is something they've actually told me, we've gone through the whole phase of, well, I'm not valid unless I date a cis person. And then they will, run the risk of dating, a chaser just to say that they're dating a cis person,
Yeah. Which, that's a whole nother thing, is, how do you vet that? Yeah. Essentially. Yeah.
Well, most of the time, a really good indicator, because I guess for the purposes of this podcast, I can out myself. I'm poly, so, all of my partners still date, and they tell me about their dating exploits. And most of the time, you can tell if a cis person, sees you as a person or sees you as, a fetish object by saying, I know a lot about a transgender. Just their language and, knowledge of, queer, I don't want to say queer theory because I don't want to sound, elitist, you can't date me unless you know queer theory. Like, pinkies up, but,
show me your certifications in queer theory.
Yeah, I only date gender studies students. Forgot that. But, yeah, like, a lot of times you can tell just by their language, their knowledge of trans people. And sometimes people are just generally, like, I've had people, like, just hit up my dating profile because they're curious. They're just like, are you a man or a woman? What the f*** does this mean? I've heard somebody. Yeah, and that's the other thing that you run into as a trans person trying to date. Is just, it becomes like people hitting you up just to educate them. And if you feel like you're ready to do that, if you feel like comfortable broaching that subject, and you've got to feel real comfortable with yourself doing that, by all means engage. Because the only way that we become people to other people is by reaching across the table. But you will still end up with some assholes who are like, you don't know what you're talking about, you're just deluded, the huge.
Yeah.
I had so many just, so are you a man or a woman? Do you have a vagina though? So you're just a really butch lesbian? I don't get your pronouns. The lesbians are the worst. I love you guys, lesbians. You're really great, but just some of the lesbians were the worst. They were just like, I don't understand this they, them pronouns. You're just a butch. And I'm like, but no, I'm not though. My presentation is similar.
I kind of wonder, having come from the
lesbian community,
yeah, but still being othered in the lesbian community for not being a full lesbian.
Yeah.
If it's one of those things because lesbians put so much emphasis on presentation.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that's how they,
especially like trans women, trans people in general, really threaten some of the queer people in the community that are cis, just because like some of those identifiers of being gay or lesbian or queer were playing around with your presentation. We're questioning gender roles, it's kind of like when the straight person asks like the lesbian couple who's the man in their relationship.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that when you approach that with any cis person, though, honestly. I mean, it's not just gay people, although, like, it adds another layer to it. People are uncomfortable about trans people because they have to ask themselves some questions that they've never had to ask themselves before. Like, you go your whole life, I mean, and you as another trans person understand this because you also had asked this question, and this is something where I can kind of feel for cis people, is you go through your whole life thinking you're one way, thinking, like, especially if you're trans, thinking you're one way, trying to be one way, and then one day you start questioning that and, like, your whole world just turns upside down. So to, like, not have also the context of being trans and try to, like, question your gender identity is a little scary.
Yeah. And also, like, the water gets muddied even more so if you come from a background where the 1950s idea of gender roles was not so hard pushed onto you.
Yeah, that's why I said, like, the queer and gay community have, like, an extra layer to it.
Yeah. When you're raised with the idea that, like, gender norms are a construct anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you start to question your, like, actual gender identity, then it starts becoming even more muddied of, like, well...
what is gender?
What is even gender? Like, what...
How does I gender?
It's like, do I actually feel this way, or do I feel this way just because I have these feelings about gender roles, or is it that I actually... And then it just becomes, like, even more of a thing.
Yeah.
But for people who, like you said, are very much raised with that 1950s America idea of what gender roles are...
like me.
Then you do have to, like, have a
your whole world gets turned upside down.
Yeah, you have a metaphorical coming to God moment where you have to have a whole crisis.
Yeah. That's a mood. A whole crisis.
One whole crisis.
Not half one. A whole one.
A whole one. For the rest of your life.
Maybe even two.
Maybe. Don't get a little overzealous, though. We don't want to go to 3. 3 is too many.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I don't know. I guess we're getting off topic here, but, like, my thing is, like, the reason that, like, I date mostly trans people is because it's easier, they get it, I don't have to educate them.
Yeah.
I mean, does that make me shitty? Maybe. But I try not to think about that. But I'm not gonna, like, not date a cis person because they're cis. Like, if I have feelings for a cis person, and they treat me like a person, then I'm gonna date them.
Yeah. And it does also come down to that, like, you can't pour from an empty cup type of thing.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like you have the emotional capacity to have to be constantly educating someone, then maybe you don't want to be dating them right now.
Well, I mean, honestly, that's why a lot of, like, marriages in which, like, you know, a hetero couple, or even, like, a gay couple, like, worse, I guess, with a gay couple, because, like, I feel like a lot of queer people just kind of base their whole personality around the fact that their gender identity, like, they just kind of get swallowed up in it. Whenever you explain to your cis partner that you're trans, they're like, well, what does this mean for me? It's not like, I don't like it because you're changing. You're like, their whole world changes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it does create that, like, now your partner has to go through one whole crisis as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I kind of feel like that's part of the reason why, trigger warning, hashtag, you have cis people that refer to us as traps. Mm. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because of the fact that they've never had to question any of that themselves.
They've never had to have the one whole crisis.
No. and I feel like maybe everybody should have the one whole crisis at least once in their life.
I mean, if we had it my way, everybody would be raised genderless, and then everybody would choose their gender whenever they felt like it.
And everybody would, and we wouldn't sexualize children in the sense of, like, presuming, like, saying, having 2-2-year-olds playing with each other that are of 2 different genders and being like, oh, look, they're a couple.
Yeah, oh my god, that drives me crazy. Oh, he's a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's 3.
Yeah, he has zero concept of any of this.
Yeah.
With that being said, though, I do also feel like introducing the concepts of being able to love whoever you want to, regardless of gender, mm-hmm. should be introduced at a decently young age, especially because of the fact that right now, still, the default in the media that's consumed by children essentially from birth is a boy and a girl.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also, like, I mean, it's gotten a lot better since the 90s. You know, we even have, like, some trans characters in shows now that aren't the butt of a joke. But, like, throughout the entire 90s when I was growing up, you know, trans people were a joke. Trans people were an embarrassment. So, like, the generation, even my generation, who is a little bit more woke, you know, still has to fight that ingrained transphobia to be able to date trans people, especially cis men trying to date trans women. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, the poor cis men here, but, like, to date a trans woman is, like, you know, to question your own sexuality, even though that doesn't make any sense because trans women are women.
Yeah.
But, like, in the headspace of a cis person, like, oh, does this make me gay? And then, like, being gay or dating somebody who is not gender conforming or who's trans is, like, the worst thing in the world. Like, if their buddies found out or their parents found out, like, that puts them in danger. And so that puts them in that, like, trapped, scared headspace, all because, you know, the woman they're dating happens to have a penis.
And even if she no longer has one.
Yeah, still sometimes it gets, yeah.
Yeah, Because then it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, you're... Even if, say, like, our hypothetical straw woman has gone through all of her surgeries that she wants to get.
Yeah.
Let's say that she wanted to get everything done. Like, the full Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah.
And she still might run into the thing of, like, okay...
Well, you were born with a penis, even though it's like been... I mean, pardon my... I mean, this might be content warning here, but, like...
This whole episode's going to be content warning, because there's no way around some of the things we're going to have to talk about.
I mean, just because you were born with a penis and turned it inside out doesn't make you a woman. It's sometimes, like, the nasty things that cis people bring up.
Oh, yeah. And there's no excuse for any of that, because it's like... Any individual's genitalia is none of your goddamn business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we kind of discussed this earlier, and going through our notes here, you know, when I have sex with a woman who happens to have a penis, they still have sex like a woman. No one has to have sex with anyone they don't want to, but, like, if you're attracted to a woman, she's a woman, even if she happens to have a penis, so, like, what's the harm? I know, a good old college try. Having sex with a trans woman is completely... I mean, to quote, you know, ContraPoints here, you know, the feminine penis, so it's very different.
Well, and then you have the cis straight men that try to create boundaries on what you can do with a trans woman that makes you not gay.
Yeah. I mean, in that case, internalized homophobia is... Most of the time, guys freak out just because internalized homophobia in general, having sex with a woman with a penis doesn't make you gay. You're having sex with a woman, but it does bring up a lot of, like, gender and sex feelings and questions that cis men, in particular, find very hard to face, given the ways that they've been raised and grown in a society. I mean, it's kind of like what I was talking about with, you know, especially in the 90s in media, trans people being jokes. Like, I mean, remember that one commercial where... I think it was like N64 or something like that. It was some kind of Nintendo device where the kid walks in on his dad, or, I mean, I guess his mom at that point, maybe. I don't know how the person identifies, but walks in on somebody who was born assigned male, cross-dressing in women's clothes with, like, makeup and the wig and the whole nine. And, like, the joke, quote-unquote, was, you know, what do I need to give you to not tell your mother about this? So, it turns us into, like, these sexualized freaks.
Well, and then you've got, like, even the entire film of Mrs. Doubtfire. And mind you, I loved that movie when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And had no context as to why this was an issue.
Yeah.
But then, like, thinking about the entirety of the plot as an adult, the entire basis for the comedy was a man dressed as a woman.
Yeah.
That was the whole basis for it.
Well, and there were so many movies, even up into, like, the aughts, like, White Chicks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But, like, I don't know. And, like, dating as a trans person is, like, really hard for me to answer because I just... As a trans, pan, non-binary person, I make everyone feel weird about dating me because if I'm doing it right, nobody knows what my gender is or what the hell I've got in the pants. So if you don't have some level of flexibility in my sexuality, in your sexuality for my, like, presentation and me, you're gonna be in for a weird time.
But that is also a really quick way to weed out the weak.
Yeah.
Which I feel is probably... I mean, I can't speak for your experience, but I feel like that's probably for the best because that way you're not having to waste any time on somebody who's going to end up having issues with it.
Yeah. Well, because I've met many, especially trans women, have this problem. I mean, and I know trans men have this problem too because I am around and know the experiences more of trans women just because I live in a house full of them. But, you know, they'll run into, like, everything will be fine until you tell them you have a penis, or everything will be fine until it comes up to the point where, you know, it's time to have sex and they find out you have a penis, or or what all of my partners disclose that they're trans on their dating profiles. Like, pretty, like, that's usually, like, the first thing that they have to put there. And I would love to have a world where we wouldn't have to do that, but it's just not practical.
And it really is better to kind of disclose that right out the gate before you even have, like, a face-to-face meeting, if possible. Mm-hmm. I know sometimes, like, if you're just out at the club and stuff, you don't really have that ability.
Yeah.
To disclose that before you meet them, because you're meeting them right there.
Yeah. Like, I mean, let's take a scenario, like, most people meet people online nowadays. Like, Tinder is a thing, OkCupid is a thing, thank God OkCupid is a thing. You know, Grindr is a thing, although, yeah, the existence in that, I don't understand if that's really good for our society. That's my own opinion.
I mean, I know one person who has had a very good luck with Grindr.
Mm. Mostly Grindr. Like, I never went on Grindr just because, like, I always felt afraid to, because just, like, it was very male, gay, dominated space. But I had a partner that went on Grindr, and, like, it was just dick pic city.
That does bring up that whole thing of, like, do you
say it again? Like, hey, just let you know, I'm trans.
Yeah, just,
like how big
to make sure they know.
How big do you have to say it? Do you have to, like, write it on a banner?
Yeah. Do you have to show up to the first date in a shirt that says, hey, I'm trans?
Yeah.
Which, please do not do that. That's dangerous. But I do feel like sometimes you do need to reiterate, because it doesn't stick the first time.
Yeah, I really hate that advice that people give, like, you shouldn't have to disclose unless you feel comfortable and you want to.
But by not disclosing, you're putting yourself at risk.
Yeah, you're putting your safety at risk. And, like, honestly, and I hope I'm not calling anybody out here, although I feel like I am, if you're doing that, if you're not disclosing you're trans, then are you just ashamed of being trans? You know? And then that's something you kind of have to look at yourself and really deep down and be like, am I ashamed that, you know, I was born with the wrong parts? Yeah.
And that kind of circles back to the whole, like, am I not disclosing because I feel like if I have to disclose, then I'm not a real woman, or I'm not a real man?
Yeah.
Because there are people that are very big about I'm not a trans woman, I am a woman.
Yeah.
I'm not a trans man, I am a man. And I'm like, that is totally fine in 99% of your life.
Yeah.
But when we live in a society where trans panic is a thing, for your own safety, in that specific scenario, the rest of your life you don't need to disclose at all. It's nobody's goddamn business what's in your pants. But when the business is what's in your pants...
Yeah. Kind of important.
It's kind of important that people know what they're going to see when it happens.
Yeah.
And
just so, like, you're not embarrassed, they're not embarrassed, like, because at the end of the day, like, if nobody's going to have sex with somebody they don't want to have sex with.
Yeah.
And if at the end of the day, like, they're just not interested in having sex with you, regardless of the reason, then they're not worth your time.
Yeah.
You should just get it over with.
Yeah. And you have those people that are people get very angry about these things. People in the trans community get very angry about these things, where it's like, they feel like you should not have a genitalia preference. But people do. Some people are very specifically turned off by specific genitalia.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
Not everybody's attracted to everything. And there are some people that were traumatized by specific genitalia. Mm-hmm. Are you going to force them to have sex with something that they were traumatized by?
Yeah.
I'm sure as hell am not.
No. Why would you want to have sex with somebody like that?
Yeah. And...
I'm not saying, like, that they were broken and you don't want to have sex with them, but more of, like, why would you want to have sex with somebody where it would be a traumatizing experience for both of you?
Yeah. Like, why would you actively want to make someone uncomfortable in a sexual situation?
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe I'm just saying this because I have been traumatized sexually, but I would like to not put anybody else in a situation where they're traumatized by a sexual experience.
Yeah.
Like, it's not... 0 out of 10, do not recommend. Like,
I'm gonna own my privilege here in saying that, like, I am non-binary and I'm also pansexual, so, like, if you got genitals, I want them.
I mean, I'm the same way, honestly, but, like, if somebody were to... Like, I've gone out on a date on several dates with a woman that when and this was when I was identifying as gender fluid.
Mm.
And so, like, on the first date, I was presenting as female, but I made sure that she knew, it's like, I just want to let you know that I'm gender fluid. And her first question was, okay, well, do you have a penis or do you have a vagina? Because I am 100% turned off by male genitalia.
Yeah.
And I was very honest and was like, at present I do not, but that might change in the future.
Yeah.
And it ended up not working out, but we're still friends and stuff like that. So it went very well. But it was also one of those things where it's, if anybody is uncomfortable for any reason in a sexual situation, regardless on if it's a good reason or a bad reason.
Yeah.
If you try to make them feel guilty for being uncomfortable in a sexual situation, you're not fixing the problem.
You're the aggressor there.
Yeah. You're exacerbating their dislike of that, and you're creating a stronger connection between that type of genitalia and uncomfortable feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of your intention. To quote JD, it's like, honor the intent but address the impact.
Mm.
The impact is very important.
Yeah.
Especially in something that's as personal as sex.
I mean, like, as somebody who is pansexual, I don't have preference for one type of genitalia over the other. And if I did, that's all it would be, is preference. Like, I encourage anybody, cis, trans, gay, lesbian, pansexual, bisexual, whatever. If you find somebody attractive, and that's not the person that you're not normally attracted to, take some time, of course, to, like, sort your own shit.
Yeah.
And, like, deal with the feelings, but then, like, go pursue it, Like, if I find a trans man really hot, didn't know he was trans, and then found out he had a vagina, that wouldn't really change anything for me. Not saying that wouldn't change anything for everybody, but for me.
And again, like you said, it's like you take your time.
Yeah.
Remove yourself from the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And deal with it on your own. Go have your own, like, self-reflection. Go have your one whole crisis. Be honest with the person that you're attracted to. Because if you just ghost them, they're going to think you're not interested.
Yeah.
But if you're very honest about it and you go, like, I do find you very attractive. I have never had an experience with someone like you, and I need to work through my own emotions on this issue.
This is a very evolved person you're talking about. Most interactions don't end up this way.
No, they don't.
But
ideally, if people could be adults about it.
Yeah.
And that's really all I ask of anybody in the world, is just be an adult. Be emotionally mature.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm saying, like, this is kind of more like advice. Yeah. What I would really like for people to do.
Yes.
Do I expect for everybody to do this? Hell no.
Yeah.
But it would be, like, the ideal way to go about it would be to be honest and be like, I'm having issues with this.
Yeah.
I need to go sort out my feelings.
Yeah.
But please don't take this as me hating you or me not being interested in you.
Yeah.
I just need to sort some things out for myself.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to this.
And poor cis men just don't ever get this advice, or, like, what I'm looking for, they never have this opportunity to have this kind of emotional depth because they're just not allowed.
No. And that's a societal problem.
Yeah. I know that a lot of trans people would not like me as much right now for saying the poor cis men, but, like, I don't know. Feminism is for everybody.
Yeah. And honestly, like, if we want to deal with the problems of toxic masculinity, we need to deal with it on a systemic level.
Yeah.
Because it is a systemic problem. It's not an
individual problem.
Yeah. It can be potentially individually solved through a lot of work one-on-one with
individuals.
With the individual themselves.
Yeah.
But we're not going to fix it on a real worldwide scale in even just one generation.
No.
It's going to take several, and it's going to take, as much as it's kind of a negative buzzword, but indoctrination of younger men into the open-mindedness that men can have emotions, besides anger. Mm-hmm. Men can be emotionally mature, to have self-reflection, and men are allowed to question their sexuality in a broader spectrum than am I gay?
Yeah.
Because sexuality is a very broad spectrum.
Yeah.
There is still some toxic masculinity within the gay community. Mm-hmm. And I would also say some toxic femininity in the lesbian community.
Oh, yeah. And as a non-binary person, I get to run into that on both sides.
Oh, yeah. The lesbians are not above the...
No, they are not.
Especially when you get the turfy lesbians.
Yeah.
Might not realize what you feel until you explore that.
Yeah.
So it's like, of course, there are exceptions to this. If you've been exposed to the concept of it, on some level to some degree, and have decided, no, then that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you are purposefully and specifically keeping yourself ignorant to it, out of, the only reason I can think of is out of fear. Mm-hmm. And I can understand a lot of pretty legitimate reasoning for, especially lesbians, to kind of have this fear against being attracted to men.
Yeah.
Especially because of the way that people assigned female at birth, the way that we're raised.
And dismissed.
And everything like that. I can totally understand it.
Yeah.
It's a totally legitimate reason to be afraid, but acknowledge that is your reason.
Yeah. Well, to give more context to that, like, if you are, like, a gold star lesbian, never kissed a man, never had any kind of, like, hetero experience, right? And you have one slip up where you're just like, oh, that person's pretty attractive. They're male. And like that in lesbian circles. And also, kind of in general, by the public, oh, well, you're just confused. Like, and that's kind of what lesbians are told growing up, even whenever they're trying to make sense of their sexuality, that they are attracted to women, is, oh, you're just confused. And so to try and face that kind of fear again and that dismissal again, I can understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really that's what a lot of it comes down to on all sides from all people that have the, quote, trans panic in general is, I'm afraid to have to deal with those questions and have to deal with that. Those feelings and have to deal with that. Well, have I just been lying to myself?
And that's a big question. Those are big feelings. That's scary.
Yeah.
As a trans person, I know.
Yeah. We know, cis people. We know.
We've had the one whole crisis.
Especially if you're, as one of my friends likes to describe, the 12-step gay. Mm-hmm. And so you start off with your, like, okay, I'm bi. No, I'm a lesbian. No, actually, I'm trans. Like, and then potentially after that, it's like, no, actually, I'm back to being bi.
Yeah.
No, actually, I'm a gay man. Like,
wow, yeah, 12-step gay. Okay.
Yeah, like you you have to have that crisis over and over and over and over again.
And nobody likes having crises. Nobody likes having one whole crisis, much less two.
No, much less 12. And especially because you have, again, it's considered to be a joke, like South Park, Mr. Garrison.
Oh boy.
Essentially, like a stereotype of a 12-step gay.
Yeah.
Like, started off as a gay man, then became a trans woman, then became a lesbian, then went back to being a man. And it's a whole thing that was like this very long-running arc over several seasons of South Park.
Yeah.
But was always kind of just used as a punchline and a commentary.
Yeah.
And so then you're also dealing with this whole thing of like, okay, well now the whole rest of the public sees me as
a punchline.
A punchline.
Yeah.
And I mean, no matter what we do in our lives, we're seen by the public as a punchline until the systemic issues get fixed.
Yeah.
A few generations down the line. So back to dating.
So, like, the finer points of dating as a trans person. Make use of the internet. It is a fantastic creation, and I love it. Make use of your communication. Make sure that you tell people you're trans. Don't leave any surprises. The sooner you out yourself, the less awkward it's going to be for everyone. Not that being trans is a bad thing, but just like people aren't prepared for it.
Yeah.
The world is not prepared for us. And that's okay. We just need to prepare them. We need to prepare them for the awesomeness that is us.
And when you do out yourself, if they have follow-up questions, use that not only as a potential opportunity to educate, but also as a way to vet them.
Yeah.
Because the way that they phrase their questions is an indicator of a variety of things. It could either indicate that, one, they're just very uneducated and don't know the proper phrases and the proper words for things.
Yeah.
Or that they're going to be a shithead.
Yeah.
And so by having those questions in the safety of the space of the internet before you give them any personal information about, like, potentially where you live or what your phone number is or anything like that, have those conversations within that dating website world so that you can vet them, because that's what that entire website is for vetting them before you meet up in person.
Yeah.
And even then, once they get to that point, maybe make it a group outing.
Yeah.
Maybe be like, okay, you bring a couple of friends of yours.
I'll bring a couple of friends of mine.
I'll bring a couple of friends of mine, and that way nobody's at risk of physical harm.
Or meet in a very public place.
Sometimes both.
Yeah.
Because even if you meet at a very public place, that does not mean that they will respect your privacy in the sense of, like, not following you out to your car, getting your license plate number, following you home.
Yeah. We have just dating safety in general. I mean, this is not dating while trans. This is just dating safety. I mean, we have protocols within my polycule of, like, dating safely, which is we tell each other when we're talking to somebody new. So tell a friend. I mean, in my case, I'd be telling my partner, but tell a friend. Hey, I'm going to see this person. This is what they look like. This is their phone number. This is where we're going. This is how long I'm planning to be out. And then, there's the first check-in whenever, hey, I've made it to the place. Everything's going okay. The person is who they said they were, And then just like a couple hours later, check in again. Hey, we're having a good time. Everything's great, Or there's also like a save me text. And this is, this can be also used as like, save me, I'm in danger, but also save me, this person is not who I want to be dating.
Yeah.
Please come up with an emergency so I can leave this situation, whether it's based on danger or based on I'm just not feeling it with this person and don't have the spoons to be, I want to do this as nicely as possible.
Yeah, which both are important.
Yeah.
And And sometimes you do need that excuse to get out, because there is also we hear the news stories about, like, men and women who have attacked people that they either went for a hookup with or went for a date with, that they got rejected, and that person happened to not be emotionally stable, and therefore their reaction to rejection was to attack.
Yeah.
So it always better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
Like, don't become a statistic.
Carry pepper spray. Carry a taser. No self-defense.
If you are going to carry something like a taser, make sure that it's something that you legally are allowed to carry.
Yes, yes. Learn how to use it.
Learn how to use it, and
if you're using pepper spray, don't use it where the wind is blowing in your direction.
Don't use it inside if you can help it.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to evacuate the entire restaurant.
Yeah.
If all else fails, and they do not have something like a gun, if you are safely able to, physically distancing yourself as quickly as possible from the other person.
Honestly, that's the safest option. Those things like a taser or a pepper spray should be like last resort, and they should be distractions for you to flee.
Yeah.
Because anytime you have a weapon, it can be taken from you and used against you.
Yeah.
So honestly, like, the easiest thing to do is just to run, or if you're wheelchair bound,
roll on out.
Yeah.
Which again, that's another good use for having a friend, or, like, if you're in a poly relationship, having a partner who knows where you are, and you can have even just a code word or a code phrase to have them actually call your phone.
Yeah.
Don't just text.
Yeah.
But to have them call your phone and give some excuse of, like, oh my god, Uncle Filbert has fallen and is going to the hospital, we need you here right now, type of thing.
My friend's phrase for, not specifically this situation, but for, I think it was, what did she say, kidnapping? It's a good day to go canoeing.
Which is one of those things where it's like, if you don't understand the reasoning behind it, it doesn't make any sense. And somebody potentially trying to read over your shoulder, which, of course, if you're going to have any plans for getting out of a dangerous situation, always plan as if it's going to be the worst case scenario. Always plan like you're in danger of showing up on a true crime podcast.
Yeah.
But then hope that you're not going to end up in that situation.
Yeah.
Plan for the worst, hope for the best.
And whatever you do, just plan to be surprised.
Yeah. Plan for your plans not to necessarily work flawlessly.
Yes. Improvise.
Yes. Never be afraid to improvise. Never be afraid to let your adrenaline fuel you getting to a safer place.
In whatever the way that happens.
Yeah. Because we are generally programmed with fight or flight responses. Although more recent studies have proven that it's actually fight, flight, or freeze.
Or friend.
So, if you know that your initial reaction to something is going to be to freeze, make a plan around that.
Yeah.
Because freezing is going to be the most dangerous option.
I think it's a good thing to cover. If you do have the unfortunate thing of being rejected because you're trans, which I have had partners, I have been lucky enough and picky enough, I guess, that I haven't had to deal with people rejecting me just because I'm trans. Outside of like a, are you a man or a woman? Well, you're just delusional kind of interaction. But like a getting to know you, getting around you, like forming a connection with somebody and then being like, oh, sorry, you're trans, I can't. That's not your fault. That's totally on the other person. I mean, that's kind of the point we were having in talking about why cis people have these reactions to us, is that like they're afraid. And for me, at least, understanding their suffering and understanding why they have the reactions that they do helps me to not be, just on a daily basis, not even on a dating basis, not feel shitty for being trans. Don't ever let dating and being rejected by somebody for being trans be your problem.
And also, I feel like if you chalk it up to the same thing of, like, somebody can reject you for any given reason. Mm. And that is within their right. Yeah. Just like it's within your right to reject somebody for any given reason. Mm-hmm. Nobody is obligated to date anybody else. Nope. And if you frame the rejection in the sense of, even if they did reject you for being trans, it's not necessarily any worse than being rejected for any other reason somebody could reject you.
Yeah, because you eat with your mouth open, or you have a giant forehead.
Or you're brunette and they prefer blondes, or any given reason.
Or you're not tall enough. That's a dumb reason. I've seen that on people's profiles. Everybody under 5'9" needs not apply.
Alright.
Which, by the way, poor trans men.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
My whole 5'3" of me. But, like, there are cis women who get rejected for being too tall. Mm-hmm. And let's say even if a person that you went out on a date with still didn't know you were trans by the end of the date, but they still rejected you because you were too tall, that's not necessarily specific to being trans. That's
because you're too tall.
That's because you're too tall, and he's a dickhead for being that way.
Yeah, and sometimes, like, you don't have a reason. Sometimes you just don't connect with that person.
Oh, yeah. And that's one of those things where it's like, that's the whole reason for going out on dates. Because unless, with the exception of people who are in a type of community that does prearranged marriages, yeah, come on.
I love the chirpy noise she makes.
Yep.
Unless you're in a society that has prearranged marriages, you're probably going to end up going on a few dates with somebody before you get into a actual full relationship. Anybody wanting to have that close of a relationship with you right off the bat is not emotionally healthy, and you should probably run very far away. Yeah. Like, you shouldn't... And I know that this is especially a problem with young people. Because young people are in a hurry to do everything. Mm-hmm. I can say this because I was like that when I was younger. Get off my lawn!
You kids, and you're jumping into relationships.
Generation Z.
But yeah, like, I know when I was, like, a teenager and young, like, early 20s, I wanted to, like, jump right into relationships and, like, first date, get the U-Haul and the cats, and you know what? All of those relationships ended poorly. Every single one of them. And, like, I feel like you should really get to know a person before you make any kind of commitments. Mm-hmm. And that does not mean that you have a fear of commitment. That means that you are being emotionally mature and understanding the weight of the commitment. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, that's also, like, the whole thing about don't let yourself get trapped into a relationship if, like, an accidental pregnancy happens or something like that. Yeah. But that's also, like, use a condom. Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing about dating that we should cover. I mean, just in general, being poly, safe sex. Safe sex is very important.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, through polyamory, like, there are certain levels of, like, safe sex. Like, I'm fluid bonded with my partners, but we get, like, tested every 3 months, and, you know, we don't have unsafe sex with, like, strangers, and, like, you know, and we define what safe sex is between all of us, too. So, I mean, that's something that you needed to, like, define for yourself and explain to other people that you're having sex with. Safe sex is important. Wear condoms.
Wear condoms. And even if you are in a sexual relationship where pregnancy is not a physical reality, mm-hmm. for any given reason, still use protection. Yeah. Even if you are female, like, both or say both people in the situation have vaginas.
Mm-hmm.
There are things called dental dams that are essentially like a flat condom that are flavored, probably don't taste very good. I have not found one that tasted good to me, but...
I mean, and if you're in a real, like, hurry, saran wrap.
Finger cots, which again, if you're in a real hurry, you can saran wrap with those as well.
Mm-hmm.
But just, it's creating a barrier between the two people for sexual fluids specifically, because you would be amazed the way that STDs can be transmitted.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in Texas, we do not have proper sexual education.
Nope.
But it's like, you can transmit STDs through oral sex.
Mm-hmm.
You can transmit STDs through vagina-to-vagina contact.
Yeah.
AKA scissoring.
Yeah.
You can transmit them anally.
Mm-hmm.
You can transmit them...
Through toys.
Yeah.
Put condoms on your toys, folks.
Yes. Anytime that sexual fluids are touching anything, if you are not 100% sure, like you have gone and gotten tested, and you know for a 110% fact that you and your partner do not have STDs of any kind, use protection.
Yeah. And if you're gonna, like, hook up with people, and, like, this is something very specific to the poly community, so, I mean, I'm not trying to get my chocolate in your peanut butter here, but, I mean, a lot of poly people go get tested at regular intervals, and, like, I suggest that for everybody. I mean, and that way, like, I know it seems unsexy. It's like you're making out with somebody, you're, like, getting hot and heavy, and it's like, okay, here's my papers.
And honestly, that's something that a conversation you should have before anything gets hot and heavy anyway. And this entire section of the episode, I am directing 100% towards the youths, which made me sound a million years old. But even if you have never had any sexual experience whatsoever, go and get tested, because STDs can actually be transmitted from parent to child through the birthing canal. Mm-hmm. You could be born with HIV and not know it.
You could be born, with herpes.
Yeah. In fact, there's a very high likelihood that you probably have some form of herpes now.
Everybody has herpes.
Everybody has...
some form of herpes.
Some form of herpes, even if it's cold sores.
Yeah.
That's a type of herpes.
Yeah.
You can have herpes in your eye.
Yeah.
You can have herpes everywhere.
I forget what the statistic is. It's like 80% of people have some form of herpes.
Yeah. So, like... and in fact, that's so common of a thing that not all STD testings test for that.
Yeah.
So if you're going and getting tested for that, make sure they're testing for everything. Mm-hmm. Because I've gone and gotten tested, and they will tell you, like, we test for everything except for herpes simplex 1.
Yeah.
If you don't know whether or not you have that, maybe ask if you can also get tested for that.
And if you're not in a place where you can pay for those kind of tests, there are places that will... there are clinics that have that kind of testing for, less money or for free.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, I've been to some of the gay clubs where they'll have a crew from one of the clinics will actually come to the club and they'll do a mouth swab test for free. So
I did not know that. That is fantastic.
That was really interesting. And this was down in San Antonio, so that's like down in Central Texas.
Yeah. That's like kind of bizarre, but also awesome at the same time.
Oh yeah, they were like, and like right, because we went in there to go see a drag show.
Yeah.
And at the door, they're like, oh, by the way, we're doing free STD testing over here. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and go get that done.
Yeah.
If you're in college, any type of college, usually you can get STD testing either for free or for very low cost through the student health through on-campus clinics, what have you. Usually you can also get free condoms through them as well. I remember in our student center at my university, they had a whole bowl of them.
Yeah.
And
if you're gay, or queer, or part of the LGBTQ community, like in any kind of LGBTQ setting, I have always seen, like, not that they're trying to sexualize the setting, because not all trans issues or all gay or lesbian issues are about sex, but there's always a bowl of condoms somewhere.
Oh yeah, and that's important.
Attend your local pride parade. You will come home with condoms.
I went to a resale store in San Antonio, in like kind of the downtown area, like a little bit north of downtown, but that's still close to like the gay neighborhood of San Antonio. And again, this was just a resale shop. This wasn't a sex store. This wasn't anything like that. And they had a bowl of free condoms. Mm-hmm. Like, you would be surprised where the, like, bowls of free condoms will appear in the wild. And...
wild condom appeared!
Dun, 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 dun. So, like, anytime that you happen to see them, even if you're not planning on having sex that night, maybe grab a couple.
Yeah.
Even if you're not sure if they are...
As a polycule, as a house of... as the magical unicorn 4-person relationship that I have, we have, like, Costco-sized container of them, even though, like, not all of us are currently dating, and most of us are not seeing people with penises, so...
I mean, there's, again, like you said, put condoms on your toys, too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And even if you're... Because, yes, condoms do expire. Mm-hmm. If you have condoms that have expired, you don't necessarily have to throw them away. You can use them on toys.
Yeah.
You can use them for fingers. Mm-hmm. You can use them... Because the biggest thing that an expired condom means, and I'm going to get into really technical stuff because I've worked in a sex shop, and we learned all this. When a condom expires, it means that the elasticity of the material has started to deteriorate, and it will be more likely to break. Mm-hmm. That is very important if you are having penis and vagina sex, or penis and anything sex. Mm-hmm. Because if that breaks, and you might not know that it breaks when it breaks. Mm-hmm. It's not something that you're necessarily going to feel. Mm-hmm.
But if it breaks on a toy, you're going to notice that shit.
If it breaks on a toy, you're going to notice it. Yeah. And if it breaks on a toy, you can take that toy out of play for the rest of the time.
Yes.
And that toy can then go and be sterilized later on. Mm-hmm. If you and a partner are in the middle of penetrative sex, and there's 2 sets of genitalia happening, and your protective barrier breaks in it, well, quite suddenly you're going to have genitalia touching genitalia. Mm. And immediately that is when potential for STD spreading can happen. Yep. There is no 5-second rule for STDs.
And trans people who are on HRT, I mean, you're going to the doctor every 3 months anyway. Just have them do an STD check.
Yeah. It's very, very simple. And if you're not comfortable with getting a blood test, the blood test is going to be the most comprehensive. Yeah. The blood test is going to be the most accurate. But you can get a mouth swab that will get a good amount of the very basic stuff. They'll be able to find out if you have HIV, mm-hmm. Which is the big scary killer one. Yeah. Although there is now medication out there that can make your HIV untransmittable, mm-hmm. but you have to stay on it. Mm-hmm. And you have to know that you have it. Mm-hmm. That's the first step.
I'm not familiar with this because I don't have a penis, but isn't there like some kind of medication you can take that like will help you not catch HIV, like PrEP or something like that? I forget what it's called. Yeah, I am on the CDC website right now, and as soon as it loads, there is actually medications called PrEP. Okay. That's like the pre-exposure prophylaxis, or PrEP, is when people at risk for HIV, so people who have anal sex, or have sex with people who have anal sex, take daily medication to prevent HIV. PrEP can stop HIV from taking hold and spreading throughout your body. When taken daily, PrEP is highly effective for preventing HIV from sex or injection drug use. PrEP is much less effective when it is not taken consistently.
And is that specifically for people who were assigned male at birth, or can people who were assigned female at birth also take that?
That I do not know, because I have only heard of trans women taking this. I've had a couple trans women who have told me about it, like, just in passing. I mean, we haven't really gotten to the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah. I think if we can get as nitty and gritty with it as possible, that would be the most beneficial. Because even though you mostly hear about people who were assigned men at birth who are participating in anal sex transmitting HIV, a lot of that is because of the fact that they don't wear condoms because they can't get pregnant. So they don't think about the fact that you can transmit HIV and other STDs and STIs via anal sex.
It's not specifically mentioning sex or gender here, so I'm guessing both sex can take it. PrEP is for people without HIV who are at risk for getting the virus from sex and injection drug use.
Oh, that sounds like...
Who have had anal or vaginal sex in the past 6 months, have a partner with HIV, have not consistently used a condom, or have been diagnosed with an STD in the past 6 months.
Okay, so that specifically with the mention of, like, vaginal sex also sounds like it can be for assigned female at birth individuals.
Oh, if you have a partner with HIV and are considering getting pregnant.
Aha!
Talk to your doctor about PrEP if you're not already taking it. PrEP may be an option to help protect you and your baby from getting HIV. So, people with, who are female and male sex-wise, who are assigned female at birth, who are assigned male at birth, whether you have a penis or a vagina, you can take PrEP and avoid getting HIV.
And obviously, talk to your doctor before starting any medication. And also I know that for minors, people under the age of 18, it can be very hard to get onto that type of medication. And let's not mince words here. There are teenagers having sex every day.
Unprotected, protected, doesn't matter. They're having sex.
Doesn't matter. They're hormones. Yeah. Hormones are raging. They are being rabbits. I mean, that is a part of many teenagers' lives. Not all teenagers' lives, and it is not a requirement for being a teenager, but it is a reality that there are many teenagers out there that are getting dirty.
Yeah.
If you are a teenager and are even considering being sexually active, if your parents are open-minded, definitely talk to your parents about potentially taking a trip to the doctors and getting on that type of medication. Definitely talk to them about wanting to get condoms.
Wanting to get tested for STDs.
Wanting to get tested for STDs. If your parents are abstinence-only parents, see if there is someone in your life who can help you get what you need.
A friend, an uncle.
A friend, an uncle, a family friend. Somebody who can help you get the supplies that you need in order to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
I do not teach abstinence only on my podcast. Feel free to send me all of your hate mail. Because I know that teaching abstinence only does not work. I grew up in Texas.
Oh, man. I wanted to have a sidebar here and just talk about my health experience in the Texas public education system. I actually wasn't taught abstinence only, but it was abstinence, preferred. It was abstinence strongly suggested. We just talked about STDs and, how terrible they were. We didn't talk about, how you could prevent them.
Yeah.
As much. And my health teacher specifically said that sex was meant for a man and a woman who were married in a godly way. In a glass. Gotta love Texas.
So outside of the normal, what's considered to be the normal condom that is made out of latex, the person with a penis wears. There is also latex-free condoms if you have a latex allergy. It's not an excuse not to wear a condom. There is the female condom, as problematic as a phrasing as that may be, that is specifically designed, it is latex-free, it looks really funny, but for people with penises who complain that they do not get they don't feel anything when they're wearing a condom, the female condom still lets them have friction, which is the thing that they're feeling or not feeling. It is inserted vaginally or anally. Can be either vaginal or anal. And it has instructions on the packaging on how to use it, and is another really good option for people who don't necessarily want to use what's considered to be the standard condom. It can also be used for fingering, either vaginally or anally, and is lubricated on both sides. Also be aware that if a condom comes with spermicide on it, the spermicide does deteriorate the material of the condom and puts you at higher risk of the condom breaking. Spermicide in general is just not good, period. Yeah. It was actually, hashtag fun fact, spermicide was originally developed to be an insecticide.
Yeah. I do not want that in or around or near my genitals.
Nope. And honestly, the only reason to have spermicide is if you are using the sponge as a contraceptive or a diaphragm as a contraceptive.
That just sounds uncomfortable.
Yes. But since now that we're at a period in time where we have such a variety of options for contraceptive, we're seeing fewer use in younger people of like the diaphragm and the sponge.
Yeah.
And was there anything else that we want to cover on this topic?
I think I covered everything. We covered safety, we covered sexual safety, we covered emotional health.
Like this episode? Tell someone about it. Have any questions or concerns? Please feel free to send an email to transfieldguide@gmail.com. Also be sure to subscribe to keep up with the latest episodes. Stay safe, and remember, I'm proud of you.